Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are tackling a huge topic, globalization. We live in a world that's more connected than ever before, through trade, technology, you name it. But that raises a really big question. What is all this connection actually doing to us, to our cultures? So let's just jump right into the heart of it. The big question is this. Is globalization just one giant cultural steamroller flattening out all the unique local cultures and creating one big generic global identity? Well, as you can imagine, people have some pretty strong opinions on this. So on one side of the argument, you have this idea of cultural convergence. The theory here is that as the world gets smaller, all of our different cultures are basically being pushed into one funnel, and we're all coming out looking more and more similar at the other end. And a huge driver of this is something called Westernization. Now, this isn't a new idea. It's been happening for centuries through things like trade and colonialism. But today, with globalization, it's like it's been put on hyperdrive, spreading Western ideas about, well, pretty much everything from our economies to how we think about ourselves. This has even earned a pretty catchy name, Coca-colonisation. I mean, just think about it for a second. A brand like Coca-Cola has the exact same logo, that same iconic red can, pretty much anywhere you go on the planet. It's a perfect symbol of how a global consumer culture can push us all towards a very similar lifestyle. And this idea goes way beyond just the products we buy. It also applies to how we do things, which brings us to this concept of McDonaldisation. And no, this isn't just about burgers and fries. It's the idea that the basic principles of a fast food restaurant, speed, efficiency, and making sure everything is exactly the same every time, are being applied to more and more parts of our society. So how does it actually work? Well, it's all about efficiency, doing everything in the quickest, most streamlined way. It's about rationality, measuring everything to make sure the end product is always standard. And of course, predictability. You know exactly what you're going to get, no surprises. And while that creates a very consistent experience, it can also lead to jobs that are really routine, repetitive, and, well, de-skilled. Okay, so it might sound like a pretty open and shut case, right? We're all just heading down a one-way street toward one big, homogenous global culture. But of course, that's only half the story. Because what happens when people start to feel like their unique identity, their culture, is actually under attack? Well, they push back. They absolutely push back. When local communities feel like their language, their traditions, their whole way of being is about to get wiped out, they don't just sit there and take it. They stand up and they defend who they are. And this pushback often gets channeled through nationalism. A slogan like this one is a really potent example, right? It's a very direct, very conscious reaction against these global forces, and it's all about trying to reassert a very specific national identity. This brings us to a really key idea: ethnic revitalization. You see, instead of just fading away, globalization can actually make ethnic differences feel stronger, more important. When you feel like your identity is threatened, it suddenly becomes something you hold on to even tighter. Now, sometimes this revitalization can lead to a process called othering. This is when a group starts to define itself by who it's not, by setting itself up against an outsider. The source material we're looking at points to the rise of Islamophobia in parts of Europe as an example of this, where a really diverse group of people gets unfairly lumped together and framed as a single cultural threat. Another form of this pushback is what's called cultural defense. This is when a part of a culture, maybe its religion or its language, becomes the central point, the main battleground for defending a group's entire identity. This can even result in younger generations becoming more religious than their parents as a way to push back against what they see as a secular global trend. So, is that it? Is it just a simple tug of war between Team Global and Team Local? Well, as you've probably guessed, the reality is a lot messier, and frankly, a whole lot more interesting than that. I mean, the experts themselves are pretty divided on this. You've got the globalists, who tend to see this as a good thing, leading to a shared culture with shared values. Then you've got the skeptics, who see it as basically Western cultural imperialism. But then there's a third group, the transformationalists, and they offer a really different way of looking at the whole thing. The transformationalist view says, hey, wait a minute, culture isn't a one-way street. It's not just about a dominant culture taking over or local cultures fighting back. It's more like a multi-directional flow of ideas, creating this amazing, creative mix of the global and the local. So here's the crucial point. Cultures don't just passively accept global ideas, and they don't just aggressively reject them either. They interact. They blend, they borrow from each other, and in doing so, they create something totally new, a hybrid identity. And a fantastic real-world example of this comes from the work of a sociologist named Swaran Johal. He studied young people in the UK from South Asian backgrounds, and he coined this term Brasian to describe their new blended British and Asian identity. So what does this actually look like? Well, it means taking some things from their family's culture, like religious beliefs, and blending them with Western ideas, like individualism and personal choice when it comes to things like dating or marriage. They're able to kind of code switch, moving smoothly between different cultural worlds, like at school versus at home with family. And in doing all this, they're actively creating a brand new identity that just didn't exist before. And this shows us that the real story of globalization isn't just about McDonald's adding a local dish to its menu. It's about people on the ground creating fundamentally new ways of being in this interconnected world. It's not about convergence or divergence. It's about transformation. And that leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Because this isn't just some abstract academic debate. This is the story of our lives. So just look around you, at the music you listen to, the food you eat, the ideas you share. Where do you see the global, the local, and that incredible hybrid all at play in the world that we are all together helping to build?